forum is being recorded, so just be aware. We're going to have today's critical conversation split into two portions. We're going to begin with 4 presentations. Those presentations in total will probably last around 40 minutes. During the presentation, chat is going to be disabled, and this is so that we all can really focus on the information being shared. If during a presentation you think of a question, please feel free to jot it down. Once your colleagues have finished presenting, we will open the chat up. We'll be moving into the Q&A period, and at that time you can either raise your hand and be called on to ask your question, or you can put it in the chat. Any questions that are put in chat will be read aloud, and we will address as many questions as we can during the time allotted, and we will answer them in the order that they were received. So I'm going to pass the mic over to President Sisson.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you so much for moderating today, and thank you all for participating. This is our second critical conversation of this new academic year, and I'm very grateful for the time that you've devoted last month to our conversation about our master plan and facilities project, with some great input from a lot of you as we kick that project off later in November. But I really want to thank you for your time today. This was not the original topic for this critical conversation, but due to a number of circumstances that have recently come to our attention, it seemed like we needed to address some issues around safety and security for all of us here at the institution. At this time, I want to thank Chairman Campbell and Vice Chair O'Connor for being with us from the Board of Trustees today. At our recent Board of Trustees meeting, we also highlighted some of the work that we are doing around safety and security, along with some of the issues that we are trying to address. So today, I really am asking for your patience. There's a lot of information. We're going to identify 4 major areas that we're going to cover and have 4 presentations. In that, a lot of information will be shared. I've asked the people who are presenting that this is not about defensiveness. This is not about what has happened in the past. This is about what are the issues that we're currently addressing, and how are we as an administration and as a college making changes to respond to a lot of issues that we've had recently. And I think what I would say to you is that some of those issues are as recent as last week. Some of those issues are ongoing, specifically with what goes on in cybersecurity. And most importantly, some of those issues have actually, in some ways, been issues and policies that have existed at the institution for decades, but really are at a time now, based on the new world that we're working in, will require a real revisit and an opportunity for us to discuss. So we ask for your patience in the presentations first, that you jot down, as Beth has said, any questions that come up in any specific area. And then we will open the floor up after the presentations are completed. We'll open the chat up as well. I'm going to ask that in order for us to have a conversation, which to me is a dialogue, that you, if you have a question, please turn your camera on, raise your hand. We'll recognize you through that process. We'd love to see you. We know that you're taking valuable time away to be part of this. And I want to thank the 4 presenters for their presentations in advance. The 4 areas that we're going to really try and cover today that are of most significance to the institution at this time is an open conversation around what we are doing with cybersecurity and the information that's important to all of us, our personal information, our information at the college, which continues to be a national issue, a state issue, and of course a UMass Lowell issue, because we are connected to their system. Joe will talk about some of the areas that he's really working on very hard to address the cybersecurity issues we're facing today. Then I've asked Patrick to step in and talk about environmental health and safety compliance. We had a number of issues that have been addressed, questions that have been asked about safety officers, about training, about some issues that have happened recently. So we want to address those and probably respond to environmental health and safety compliance. The 3rd presentation will be from Rebecca, where she's going to have an opportunity to talk to you about the Student Code of Conduct, violations for the process, and issues, also the process for re-entry for students who have been suspended or expelled. And we'll cover that in a general sense to be able to talk about some of the changes that a working group has been working on very diligently. And I know we have members of the working group on, and I want to thank them for their service in immediately responding to revisit many of the policies that we have and how we implement those policies. And last, Dan will talk about public and personal safety. One of the issues that we've had most recently on Middle Street really has brought this to the forefront, and we want to be able to address how we are trying through our security systems and through our personnel to address that issue. And we'll throw in some communication about conversations we've had with the city manager, specifically in Lowell, and the police department as well. So without any further ado, I'm just going to turn this over to Joe for the first presentation around cybersecurity. And again, as we go through these, please jot your questions down and we'll try and address as many questions as possible. We hope this whole presentation period will take no more than 40 minutes. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Beth, am I bringing my slide up? Or...
If you are, we don't see it yet.
I can do it for you, or you can do it. You do have share screen. Would you like me to?
Please.
All right.
So Beth brings up, I have one slide for you. I want to begin this quick presentation by closing out the month of October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And we had some good participation at our All Professional Day last week in terms of a number of IT presentations. One delivered by the college's Information Security Officer, Pramod. A lot of good conversation happening, as well as Peter Shea being proactive and reminding all of you about your cybersecurity training. And that is probably one of the most important items that you can keep up with is cybersecurity training. The best way that we can mitigate risk at the college is having a good informed user community. And having been in a number of conversations with direct outreach from a number of you who have experienced emails with phishing kind of tags in them, you're getting very, very good at spotting these. So I thank you again for that effort. It is an all-college effort. Looking at the slide I prepared for you, this is the same slide I delivered presentation last week to the board of directors, board of trustees. And what we like to promote is our three-pronged approach of cybersecurity. This is very high level, and I have 8 minutes left, I think. So I'm going to go through this rather quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions once we've completed the presentations. I like to think of the three-pronged approach as people, process, and technology. And when these all work and these gears are turning together, it is promoting good cybersecurity practices and mitigating risk. I told the board last week that when I first started this job as the college's chief information officer in 2016, security was a small part of my job. It is now a very big part of my job. And you've seen a number of my communications as recent as last week about some of the threats and risks the college has experienced. As Phil noted, we do receive our internet service from the University Information Systems Department. It is a UMass contract and partnership that we have. And it's part of a public ring that we belong to. And when that ring is subject to cyber threats, it affects us as well. And that's kind of what happened last week. So I've already mentioned training. Annual training is very important that we maintain a good educated user community. Physical security. I've been working with a few vendors. I'll be scheduling a demo soon, working with Rebecca Newell, Arlene on the student side. We're going to look at some access controls at the college for secure areas with an access card, as well as looking at updating the ID system for students and staff. Then we think about authorizations and permissions. Who is using the infrastructure, when, and what part of the infrastructure are you allowed to access, whether you're on campus or remote. And if we look at process, we've done a significant amount of work on policies and procedures. In 2019, right before COVID, I contracted with a security vendor. They did a complete security assessment and a penetration testing exercise. A penetration testing exercise is security experts trying to break in through the college's firewall and penetrate our systems. They generate a report. They tell you where you're strong and where you need areas of improvement. We needed areas of improvement in policy. I will tell you they could not gain access to the college's infrastructure, which is where we're pretty strong, and I'm happy about that. We have a data governance group now, and that is a collaboration between Chris Fiore and IR and Pramod Bhardwaj and IT, and we're looking at roles and where do you gain access based on your role. So some good data governance. I have some partnerships with external vendors who manage and monitor our network. So that is happening 24 hours a day. What they're doing is they look at all of the traffic. When I say traffic, it's binary, it's numbers. They look at algorithms. They don't look at personal data, and they look for inconsistencies or abnormalities, and they report them back out. And then we promote our cybersecurity practices, policies, and governance with our external partners. So we have software and we have other services where our vendors actually have access to our systems. And so they must practice the same security levels that we're promoting. And when you think about technology, I think about the competent, dedicated, well-educated IT staff. I think about our IT audits that we have with the state, with our lenders, making sure that we are meeting our standard cybersecurity practices, and then the use of operational technology. So that's really a very high level view of our three-pronged approach of cybersecurity. Went through this kind of fast, but happy to answer questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Now we're going to move on to Patrick, who's going to give us an overview about environmental health and safety compliance.
Good afternoon, folks. Ditto, thank you for joining us for part of this. I want to just update folks even from the last one of these critical conversations we did at the beginning of October, just with some information that was posed as a question during that gathering and changes that we've made as a result even of that conversation and with other matters that have been occurring on campus. We've come up with a different approach on how we're going to be handling environmental health and safety issues here in terms of compliance for the college moving forward. And this impacts both our campuses. After our last conversation, as we started to take a look at what we've done over the course of years, we realized that we needed to have a bit of a bench in that area that would allow us to handle matters, investigations, and or compliance reporting with a wider berth. So I want to use today to announce a couple of changes and updates, and hopefully this will help address some of the concerns that folks have raised, specifically from whether it's the STEM programs or the folks over in some of the properties on Middle Street. That we have an immediate, short-term, and a long-term plan on how we're approaching this for you. The immediate, to follow up on the question that was posed by a faculty member last time around, is that Frank Morandi, who's in charge of facilities in Bedford, does serve as a health and safety officer for the college. But what we realized is that we needed to spread this around more than one individual. So we met and came up with a rollout here over the course of several weeks that we are going to have two other individuals on campus who are doing that as well. So Dan Graham, who is the Director of Facilities here in Lowell, is going to be taking on that role as well for these issues. And Dan Martin, who previously had been in just public safety, has expanded his role to a campus safety and operations role for us. And I say that because both Dan and Dan, as a result of a meeting we had with Frank, have already begun a training program, which if they sat at the computer and went straight through this, it would take them about 3 weeks to get the necessary certifications and compliances in place. But as we know, there are other things that bubble up in the course of the day. So they've started their training programs, and by the end of the semester, all three of them will be beginning the spring semester with the same level of certifications for any of our federal reporting and our incidents on campus. I say that because we had an incident on campus last month that we are handling as a group, as well as working with outside agencies who are looking at our levels of compliance with some of this. And what we found, which is a valuable exercise in terms of us reviewing processes, is that we need to post-COVID actually bring a lot of our reporting and documentation structures up to date and up to state-specific codes. So what you're going to be seeing specifically for the folks, whether it's in Henderson primarily, down in Bedford, and our Middle Street facilities up here, is a lot more required documentation of what kind of materials we have in place and signage that we need to have accompanying those, with data sheets that are going to be much more readily available and spread out across a larger population. This is, in my opinion, it's been a valuable exercise. We've had a very good relationship with the Labor Department, who's been working with us on these things, and their remediation recommendations have been primarily cosmetic. But one of the surprises to us, which, we have incorporated into it, is just to make sure that even in our cleaning materials that we've used, many of which were introduced during COVID, that we still have data sheets in all of the, all of the locations where these are stored. So it was a good teaching tool for us to hear from the state on what they expect from us. We're going to be getting a full report back from them with a review of the properties. But I'm confident that what they're laying out as a roadmap for us, as well as training that would be required for anybody who is handling these materials or is in the area where these materials are stored, is going to be a valuable resource for us in the long haul. So give us a few more weeks. Both Dans will be up to snuff pretty soon on this. Again, my plan here is that we'll make it official with the implementation of the 3-member team handling these matters for discussion and for review moving forward, January and beyond. So with that, there are some other matters that will come back around my way. I think Dan's going to cover some of them. Phil had referenced some conversations we've been having with outside agencies, specifically the city manager of Lowell, but I'll jump back in when we get to that piece of the presentation. So I will yield the floor to my colleague from down the hall, Rebecca. I don't see where we went here.
I'm here.
There you go. You're up.
Slides up there. 1 second. All right. So my focus, start from the beginning, is on student behavior, and specifically the intersection of college safety and student behavior. And let me start by saying, and you can see from this slide, that the vast majority of my work has actually just touched the surface when it comes to safety. But when it does, this is where Dan Martin and I collaborate very closely. But I can say in my over 2 decades here at the college, we have been so fortunate to have a student body that really does what one would expect a student body to do. They go to class and join clubs, they study, they make friends, and then they go home. So I want to give credit to our students for that. We're very fortunate. Our numbers are far less than some of our peers across the state. But I also want to recognize the student assessment and intervention team for this work. This first prong to student behavior is prevention. And I think I must have been working in student activities when SATE was developed back in the olden days. But over time, it has significantly decreased the number of conduct cases that we see, because early prevention and often I think we have the data to show that has been the key to keeping our conduct cases very low. But let me tell you a little bit about SATE. Some of you work with SATE very closely. You might, I think everyone on this call probably remembers the tragedy of Virginia Tech in 2007. And that incident sparked great change in the landscape of campus safety across the country. And one of the things that came out of that were these threat assessment teams. And every college campus was expected to have some sort of team that would assess the threat on their campus. And so we, just like everybody else, started one, and professional organizations popped up to assist and help with the creation of policies and procedures. And over time, these teams started to be called care teams, or had a more of a caring approach. Threat assessment was still part of the mission, but much of the work had to do with intervening with these lower level concerns, these red flags or warning signs, because we, meaning everybody who was part of this across the country, wanted to stop threat before it became a threat. And this team has done a phenomenal job doing that. Some of you are familiar with our small incident report, really a model for the state. Community colleges are all adopting that still. It's public facing. So on our website, anybody can fill out a small incident form, and small is of course subjective. So whatever that means for you, if you see some kind of warning sign or something you're concerned about, whether it be behavior, like a conduct that you're concerned about, or maybe you're trying to advocate for a student in your class who said some things you're really worried about in a paper or in a presentation. We get the whole spectrum of behaviors reported through this process. And students also have access to a form through the student portal. So they have the ability to submit anything that they find concerning with their peers. And these forms are typically what set the SATE process in motion. Each report becomes its unique case, and it's triaged immediately. So the form comes in and quickly is sent out to a member of the team with the most expertise or knowledge to handle the details that have been submitted. Once that is triaged, that individual will review the circumstances and follow up with the reporter, typically within 24 hours. Sometimes a report comes in that is marked as informational. The person who's making the report says, I just wanted to let you know about this. I'm not really concerned yet, or I handled it myself, but I just want you to track it. And so in those cases, those get filed for tracking. There are 3 phases once we have a report. There's the data collection, which is really the investigation. There's the analysis of all the details, and then there's the intervention. And while SATE meets regularly, we don't wait for the meeting to start this work. This is all immediate and ongoing. You should know many of the cases, in fact, most of them, are social adjustment issues whereby students are presenting awkwardly or they're rude. We've seen all the emails that come in from students that just are inappropriate. There's also an uptick in suicidal ideation and other visible signs of depression and anxiety. But most of these behaviors do not rise to a level of a policy violation, and they're not cause for sanctioning, but they do require intervention, care conversations, perhaps some parameters for behavior going forward. Sometimes we'll do a behavior contract with a student, but we try to set them up for success, and it's really effective. For the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of SATE, who is Leonard Russ, and he should be able to unmute himself for this one.
Thank you, Rebecca. So yes, as said a lot regarding what SATE is and the functionality, this is a care team that's really comprised of personnel within the institution with a number of expertise in student affairs, mental or physical health, student conduct, as Rebecca was referencing, and some law enforcement and or just campus safety as a whole. We do meet on a bi-weekly basis and often meet to assess and follow up on various needs, but also interventions. What's important is designed by that particular members category. So regarding, suicidal ideations and things of that sort, oftentimes myself or Lynn would be the front runners to make sure they follow up and assess and also provide that consultation with staff. We do look to continue to have the right training in place for not only the personnel, but those within the community, but we also really desire to make sure that we are up to date on everything, as well as in terms of those, like, what do we need to best do our assessments for ourselves and our work, but also look to how we can best support our students and provide that wraparound care, as was stated, to prevent future issues throughout the institution. This particular team, as you see listed above, those personnel, sometimes because of just the ingoing and exiting, incoming new staff, exiting of staff, we recognize that this team has, they may change a little bit, myself, new. So there is some additional training that we do have to then put in place to ensure that we are consistently up to date. And so that being said, we're not an exclusive group. We do take consultations and supports from outside members of the community, people like Jessica Frost, who's helped with a number of things, Christina Bell, Noreen, and any other academic deans, and definitely legal counsel that could help us as we talk through what is the best step to help the student and or to address and support the faculty. All of our meetings are confidential. We do, when we observe and make sure we respect all privacy laws of students, but HIPAA protections and any mandated ruling within that. But we also do recognize and take the appropriate steps when it is a question of safety and or harm, rather harm to self and or some type of threats. And if there are threats, which they are rarely, they're rare, but when they do take place, it is something that we do seek, law enforcement support with. This particular group really deals with more so campus safety and when as it pertains to harm to self and small matters of that sort. We do, as Rebecca stated earlier, regarding upticks in suicide ideations and things of that sort, we do have reporting policies regarding within our suicide prevention. I do encourage you to check the website, particularly Dean's webpage, to familiarize yourself with our suicide prevention protocols. Trying to think if I left anything off with this. I think that's it. Turn it back over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Leonard. A lot of questions come in. Well, what happens if it does rise to a conduct violation? And so briefly, I'll let you know about the Student Code of Conduct, but this is also on our website. So if you want to dig deeper, you can find it right there. It's in our college catalog, which is also considered our student handbook. A list of all college policies are there. And if you want a hard copy, I have some very nicely bound copies in my office. I'm happy to send you one. But in the event reported behavior does reach a level where there is an alleged violation of college policies, this is the process that we use. And each semester, every student must acknowledge receipt that they've received this. They do that through the portal. So we know that everyone has at least accepted that they have received it and they say they read it. This is a shared set of regulations with all of our community colleges across the state. And we consistently follow the same process for any of the 32 violations that you can see up here. So the process identifies all 32, and only a handful, a very small handful of those are related to safety or threat. Most of them are your garden variety college student behavioral issues. We are very fortunate, as much as I have always wanted residence halls at Middlesex. For the purposes of the Code of Conduct, I'm grateful that we don't. That is where your alcohol violations, your sexual misconduct, our numbers are at 0 for these kinds of behaviors. Most of our violations are unrelated to safety. The most common offense is academic dishonesty. shouldn't be a surprise, especially in this digital world. And then followed by disruption. And when I say disruption, I'm not talking rioting. It's very low level, but distracting behavior that gets in the way of the learning environment. So people have asked before about suspension and consequences for these behaviors. The student is typically suspended if one of those safety violations is in play, and they may be suspended during an interim process, during the investigation, and then they can be suspended for, an indefinite amount of time. And I'm going to let the working group address the reentry, which is also very rare. Most students who are suspended for a long time choose to go elsewhere during that gap. But consequences can include everything from a written warning up through expulsion with a transferable conduct record. It does become part of their record. So when colleges ask for that upon transfer, that goes with them. This is going to be hard to read. I know that, but I want it. So don't worry so much about the text. You can find this online, but I did want to point out that we do use a rubric. This is best practice. NABITA is the national standard for intervention teams, and we use this for conduct as well. Every SATE member received one of these a few years ago, laminated copy to review. I think the new folks probably need one. And we're going to schedule some training around these things. But you can see here that there are 4 major levels to consider, and they give specific behaviors for each one. If something has reached the elevated or critical, the 3 or the 4, it's definite that law enforcement's involved at that point. This is not going to be a simple intervention on campus. So most of the things we see are in that moderate or mild area. In fact, many things are even below mild. They're just what we call informational. Student fell asleep in class kind of behaviors, but we do track those as well. And speaking of tracking, and I'm almost through my slides here, tracking is critical to the prevention and the response work. Middlesex was the first community college in the state to have a web-based platform for tracking. We use Simplicity by Advocate. All the other colleges now have caught up. And the beauty of this is not just for file keeping. This is a system that will track till the end of time. So any behavior that's happened since we got this over 10 years ago is in the system. It is each individual behavior has its own file, not each student. And the reason for that is because we need to track each individual incident. So student fell asleep in one class and then they cheated in another class. And then in another class, maybe they said something threatening. And we need to watch those patterns. They really speak to an overall picture of what's going on with the student and helps with the strategies for intervention. We have a module in this system for care interventions. That's what SATE does. We have a module for all the alleged conduct violations, whether they're found responsible or not, they all go in there. And we have a module specifically for sexual misconduct and Title IX. Certain people have certain permissions for each one, but the beautiful thing about this system is that all the modules speak to each other. So if somebody is tracked in the Title IX module, it will flag in the conduct module if something else happens there. So we're able to see that immediately. And then we're notified as well. This is the highlight of this piece of the presentation, the Campus Safety Working Group. So grateful for these 4 people. Eloisa, Hallie, Jeffrey, and Jose are just a joy to work with and have come with all sorts of ideas on how to improve the practices that we have. And they've already put a lot of time into that. And I want to give them a chance to speak to the work and just to say the college really is receiving their feedback very, very well. In fact, not just these 4, but everybody that's coming forward. We know that the law changes and our students are changing and the environments are changing, and so must policy and practice. So Hallie, why don't I turn it over to you and you can explain the goals of the committee and anything else you'd like to mention.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Rebecca. I just wanted to say hello. I think most of you know me. I'm Hallie Sugarman. I'm the Director of Paralegal Studies, and I've been fortunate to be asked to be part of this wonderful working group, as Rebecca mentioned. Some of the goals of the committee right now, in no particular order, is really to represent some faculty and staff voice as we begin to rebuild and rewrite some sections of our policies related specifically right now to student reentry. I think we are aware of an incident on campus this year with a student coming back on campus after another issue. And I always say, much like finding gaps in our syllabi when we have a student issue arise that we haven't seen before, those types of incidences give us the opportunity to go back and fix those gaps. And one of the most important things that I think our role right now is to do it as a collaborative effort and have the faculty and staff voice be heard on that process, which you can see by the four of us here. We are serving as that voice. And so in terms of our goal and our involvement, that's really what we've been doing. I think we've had 3 or 4 meetings already in a short period of time and representing concerns that everybody has and making sure that we make our campus as safe as possible, obviously for the students, but also for those of us that have to come and want to come to work every day and feel safe in that environment. And so I'll just turn it over to others so they can introduce themselves and speak as well.
Thank you, Hallie. So this is Eloisa here in the Criminal Justice Department. So I'm also part of this working group. And we as a group, we have been taking the voice of faculty and professional staff very seriously through this process. We are aware, as Hallie mentioned, of the gaps within the policy, and we're very carefully reviewing what that reentry process would look like for a student. So after someone has been suspended, there are steps that the person will have to go through if they want to return to the campus. Some sneak peeks, as Rebecca has mentioned, about this policy that we're working on will be to have a group that makes the decision. So in the future, for any student who is suspended from the college and would like to return to the college, the decision will be based on a group's response to what had happened. Also, and I'm not sure, Rebecca, like how much of the policy we are already at the point for talking about, but some adjustments that we plan to include in this policy will be a victim impact statement. So anyone who was part of the initial issue with a student who would like to re-enter the college will have a voice in that process by being able to submit a victim impact statement. There will be a team that will review and make recommendations whether the student will be fit to return to the college. So we're taking that very seriously. We know the letter that was submitted on behalf of faculty and professional staff, we are using it as a guideline for creating this policy moving forward.
Thank you so much for that. I think it was far more effective to hear it directly from you, and I'll continue to let you take the lead on this. You guys have been amazing. Just got 2 more quick slides. The intervention team and the conduct and Title IX officers, they have hundreds of hours of training and experience combined, but the landscape is always changing. So development must be ongoing. These are just a few of what's planned for this academic year for training for the people that do this work, and also an audit self-assessment of our intervention team with the national organization. And finally, you should know that we're required by federal law to post our annual safety and security policies and criminal statistics. So you can find that on our website. And this is all criminal behavior. It's not related to student behavior for the most part, but I do submit that report. So I put it on here, and I also thought it was a good segue to Dan, who's up next. And so I will turn the floor over to him. Dan, are you able to unmute? There you go.
Yep, I am unmuted.
And hit share.
And I have this. So now I'm going to start this from the beginning. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Thank you, everybody, and I hope everybody had a safe and happy Halloween. It's one of my favorite times of the year. I wanted to briefly just discuss this emergency guide that we worked on pre-COVID, and you'll probably notice that we have them in all of our classrooms, our conference rooms, and we try to get them by every phone in the hallways. And if you notice that one of your rooms or the hallway is missing one, please let me know. I have plenty available. So, I just want to make sure that they're all up and in the locations that we're, targeting. I also want to let you all know that the public safety officers are available 24 hours a day for an escort to and from classes, different buildings, their vehicles. If someone, is getting out late and it's dark this time of the year, it's getting dark real early, and they want someone to walk them to their car, please give us a call and we'll be more than happy to do so. I also want to mention that we have first aid cabinets in every single building, and in some buildings we actually have multiple cabinets. It depends on, the size of the building and whatnot. So we have a contract with Allied Security, and before any security officer comes here and holds a post at MCC, they have to go through an 8-hour orientation at the office. And through that orientation, they're getting some Title IX training, the Clery Act that Rebecca just mentioned, VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act, FERPA. They're all bloodborne, pathogen, and first aid CPR certified, and they also do receive some OSHA training. I just want to make it clear that once that officer goes through that 8-hour training, and when they come to MCC, they also receive an additional 16-hour on-the-job training before they're even allowed to sit post on their own. They all go through a full Corey and SORI background check, a drug screening, all that stuff. So they're not coming here without 24 hours of training when they're on their own. And once that happens, we don't just, let them go. We also do monthly trainings, and you can see there's a list here, but just so that folks know, we try to target some of our trainings around the type of the year. So like, just for a quick example, I know that we're up against time here, but for a quick example, we're going into the winter months. So I want to make sure that every security officer goes through that type of training so that they know what they're looking for, icy patches and whatnot, and how to treat and deal with that. This is something that most of you may not know that we have, but it's called a Be Safe manual. And there's one for the Bedford campus and the Lowell campus. And what that is it's a manual of the blueprints of all of our floors. So if we have a large scale emergency event here, when police, fire, or medical arrive on site, they have access to this, and they have access to it online as well. But it will give them a clear understanding of the blueprints of the floor in the case they need that. And there's also emergency contacts for each campus on who they need to call. If it's after hours, they know how to get a hold of Phil. They know how to get a hold of Patrick or myself or anyone on the facilities team. Their numbers are in these books. I also wanted to mention that we're having some upcoming trainings. I want people to, be aware of their surroundings. And that goes back to my first slide with all those numbers on there. If you see something that's just out of place or it doesn't feel right, don't hesitate to call the public safety number and we'll come and check it out. Or we'll talk to the individual that may be causing, that for the reason for us to go up there. So please, if you see something out of place, give us a call and we will gladly go up and investigate it. But some of the trainings that we have coming up, we're going to have some multiple courses offered by both the Lowell and on the Bedford campus, and it's the RAD safety training. I'm also going to be conducting with my team active shooter safety training. We just did one on professional day. The classroom was full. It was the first time in almost 3 years that we had the face-to-face training, and I welcome people to please go. If you just want a refresher, come to the class. You're going to be seeing dates and locations sent out on Newscaster. I will also be holding one for students sometime at the end of February, early December. So they're more than welcome to come out and learn that. And I think I peppered through that pretty quick to get on track here. But I'm going to turn it back over to Beth. Oh, well, before I do that, I just want to remind people that we have tons and tons of COVID test kits. They're on our lobby. They're in our lobbies. They're on Main Street in Bedford here. If you need some, let us know. We'll get them to you. We also continue to hold the COVID testing every Monday in the Federal Building, room 222, and that is between the hours of 12 and 2. So back to you, Beth.
Thank you, Dan. I am going to be opening up the chat. So if you have any questions that you jotted down during the presentations, or if anything's coming to you now, President Sisson encourages you to actually turn on your camera and raise your hand, and we can go to you. But you also can put that question in the chat and I will read it aloud.
Thank you,
Beth,
Beth. I just want to remind people that there will be multiple people potentially answering a question from multiple vantage points. So let's be patient about those answers and make sure that we can get to everybody that we possibly can today.
Beth, I just want to also recognize our student trustee, Dari Martinez, has joined us on this call, and Dari had introduced a couple of facets of this conversation at the September Board of Trustees meeting. We did work with her last week, and I also want to fill folks in to let them know that as a result of Dari's involvement, there was a survey sent out by Institutional Research. Allison Haney, thank you for turning around so quickly. They got about 300 plus respondents from students asking about their perceptions of safety on both campuses. And a lot of what was gleaned from their comments and suggestions would actually mirror a lot of what even faculty and staff would say, that it was respective to the environment external to the college that posed a lot of concerns. So we do appreciate Dari taking the lead on that. I know she's going to be circling around again with her colleagues to share this information back to us, but it was a great way for her to bring the conversation up a notch. So thank you on that, Dari.
Yeah, Dari, thank you for your partnership in this, including the comments that we've had, both of the Board of Trustees and outside in our meeting with Pat and I. And I also want to mention that I hope that the context that was provided from particular areas may provide some additional information to you. If in these conversations you need any clarification on anything, please don't hesitate to ask. So Beth, let's open it up for conversation.
Will do. All right, Valerie, you are first.
All right, I actually have two questions. One, how do we find out where the locations are for the first aid kits? And two, in terms of and I may be mispronouncing this, the NABIDA visual that was shown with regard to the series of escalations and descriptions related to that, might it be possible to share that with all of us so that if we're filling out a SATE report, for example, we can use some of that language and share the same common ground with regard to where a concern lies?
Yep. I'm going to let somebody else handle the first aid kits in a moment, but I think that your idea, Valerie, is a good one. I think that off and on, many years ago, as Rebecca identified, that this was part of the original conversations with the people who were originally on the SATE team, reinvigorating this information for not only the SATE team, but for faculty and staff across campus would be great. So I'm going to ask that, Rebecca, you work with Donna Corbin from my office to make sure that we get that out to everyone that works at the institution later this afternoon.
And as far as the first aid kit, thank you, Valerie. In the lobbies, you'll see there should be a 8x11 paper there, and we'll tell you the location of the lobby. Of the first aid kit, and it should also be in your break rooms. And if they're not, again, please let me know. But I'll make sure that the officers go around and verify all that.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Hallie, you had a quick follow-up?
Thanks, Beth. Just a couple of things I realized. I looked at my notes afterwards. I meant to mention, I forgot. Number one was that all this work in terms of, this is going back to Rebecca's presentation and the working group that we have to update our student policies and procedures, especially as to reentry, is number one, all of this work is being done in consultation with the college's community college council. We're certainly not operating in a vacuum. And so we are being advised from legal as to what we can and cannot do within the bounds of both state and federal laws, FERPA and more. So just in case anybody was wondering about that process, that is certainly being done. And number two, we had received a question about the timeliness of this because we all know that we get very busy and sometimes important matters move to back burners. This is not on a back burner. So in case anybody is wondering, we are moving forward as quickly as we can. As I mentioned, we've had several meetings already, but just as you know, as soon as there's more updates, we will bring them to the community. So just wanted to mention those because I forgot. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, Hallie, thanks for the shout out for Gina Yarbrough, General Counsel, who works with the community colleges. Gina's background is unique in the sense that she worked for many years as a litigator in the mental health field. She's worked at four-year institutions. She circled back with the community colleges about 1.5 years ago, and she's an incredible resource. It is not legal counsel here. We've opened that up for a while now. In essence, it's not just the president calls legal counsel. Many people on the staff have access to conversations with legal counsel to get their advice, which is what they provide to us each and every time. And in specific cases, we need to be using our legal counsel as much as possible to make good determinations. So appreciate that shout out to Gina, Hallie. Thank you.
Dan, I have another question about the first aid kits. How do we go about getting those restocked?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I failed to mention that when I was talking about it, but they're restocked each month by Cintas. And I do see the comment on the side here. So I made a note to make sure that they're getting the 4th floor in the Derby, but they're restocked every single month.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else have a question? Valerie?
I'm back. So this isn't really tied into some of the topics we've talked about, but I always pay attention to the certificate in relation to our elevators. And I noticed those have been updated and I appreciate that, but it always seems to be months later. How does all of that work in terms of when they're assessed, the documentation, et cetera?
I can answer that one. Elevators are up for an annual inspection. We have to apply for a permit 90 days before the expiration. The state has 90 days after the expiration to inspect them. So they have 6 months from the time we pay them to come in and inspect them. So that's where you find that lag to where you'll see this one's expired, that one's expired, and then I go back through and make sure we made the payments and that they are on the schedule.
Excellent. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Dan, we have a question about AEDs. Oh, Dan, you're muted.
I hit it and it's weird. Okay, anyway, we do have AEDs on campus. The public safety officers have them in their office. And they're all, like I said earlier, they're all trained on the AEDs.
Yeah, when we can, if we can just tell people what an AED is, for those people who are unaware, that would be helpful. And I think we also need some clarification on RAD for people who are unfamiliar. So
I've got RAD queued up, so I'll take that.
The AED is the automatic electronic defibrillator. So in the event that, we come onto a scene, we get a call saying that someone's having a heart attack or whatever, they bring that AED and it allows us to, put that on the individual and administer a shock until the paramedics get here. And the AED will not allow a shock unless a shock is needed. So it's not like we can, misuse it. If it detects any type of rhythm in the heart, it will not shock.
And on the RAD front, Phil, that Jessica had asked about, the RAD stands for resisting aggression with defense. It's a basic, it's a personal defense training program it's a national program actually that talks about self-defense tactics and techniques. Decades and decades ago, it had a different temperature and tone to it, but they've expanded it now to be much more broader in its reach. So we have partnered with the Lowell Police Department up here on this campus, and the Bedford and Billerica folks are joining forces to help us on the Bedford campus to run these classes. It is a 3-hour training program. Some of it's just classroom, education, but there definitely is a tactical component to it. So I know that those of you who've gone through it, I've seen it in progress. It's a good day for the yoga pants and or sweatpants because there is some physical work that's involved. We usually do it we'll take like half the cafeteria on either location, and we're going to offer it multiple times. It's applicable to everything in the world. It's not Middlesex specific. It's barely going to be. It's just if you were confronted anywhere with any type of violence, it's some basic self-defense skills. So if it works on your schedule, if you can make it work on either campus, I would encourage folks to avail themselves of it.
Thanks, Pat. Professor Begum.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, I am the one of those quiet person. I wish my question was asked by someone, but today this is not a question. It's a kind of my concern, and it's not a complaint either. It's a concern, and I like to share with everyone. As you know that my office is in Pollard Building, so incident happened on Middlesex Street. So I am worried and I'm scared. So I just wanted to share that I participate in a lot of across the college, different groups, and I had opportunity to learn from other faculties and staffs, and across the college. So I'm fortunate that I was able to learn from everyone, and for the reason I can tell that we have a very dedicated professors, faculty, and staff, and everyone. So my recent concern is about the security. Okay, for that reason I'm kind of scared. And Dan, is not up to you. We are doing really, all of our college, everyone is doing really great thing to protect us and student and everyone else, right? Rebecca showed us the rubrics. I saw the rubrics. Yes, we do follow the rubrics, right? And I also myself follow the rubrics in class. Sometimes we make exception to the rubrics. I came to the class this semester with the mind that I will, two words. One word is I will connect with my student, and second word is I will retain that student. So that's the 2 word was my this semester goal. Okay, because I am facing the student I'm facing is a brand new student. So I have to connect with them, otherwise I'm going to lose it. So that was my 2 words. So for that reason, in order to connect, to fulfill my goal, what I planned myself, I organized myself that I'm going to stay those 2 days from morning till 6 o'clock. Because, remember the connect word? Because my couple of students, they work during the day and that they are free after 3 or after 4. So I can make my office hour, not the our fixed office hour. Some office hour, no one comes. I do my work, So if I can be a little bit flexible, then I can get the student, I can connect with the student. That was my goal. And so why I'm giving that example, as you know, that I am part of Real Talk. So I'm giving you my real talk, okay? So now real talk is just come to me this way. So that's my real talk. I manage my family. I manage my family that how I told them Tuesday and Wednesday, don't talk to me about anything. And then I will be with you rest of the week. Okay. So because I wanted to connect, that's my goal. And I have to be flexible. So what, and we have ton of professors are dedicated professor, staffs are dedicated, and everyone is dedicated here. But what I see, since this is going to happen, we can, as a security professor, I know we cannot give 100% security, right? But we will try our best. So my best is what I am facing, that I cannot deliver my best due to the security. Believe me, what I did, it hurt me. What I did after that incident, I did not come in the morning. I said, okay, because I'm scared, so I'm gonna come just before half an hour. I'm gonna come. I don't want to take risks, so I'm gonna come at 1 hour before my class, and I will stay half an hour in the car, and then just before half an hour, I will come to my office to get into the building. So this is my situation. Because I was thinking all the time that I don't want another Virginia Tech here. Okay, so before that happened, I need to do my part, how I can secure myself. So the reason, so this is my yesterday, and today I locked my door. I'm in my office, but I locked my door because I'm not comfortable. You get my point? So in Pollard building is very quiet, you know. So I said, so that's why I'm thinking myself that how can we all help each other, and how can you guys can help me to serve here even better. I try my best, but I wanted to do more. What my plan did this semester, I cannot execute that. So what happened, my student who I accommodate like after 4 and 5, what I have to do, I have to connect with them via Zoom, which I don't prefer. I want some to be who wants to see me, talk to me, sit with me, so I can connect. I can understand them. I can hear their personal problem. It's not my job, but the reason they share with me, because they're comfortable with me. Some students says you are approachable. I said, okay, that was my goal. That's why I share with you my real talk, you see? So my goal is to you share with me too, so I can help you. So having said the rubric, still I'm a flexible. So what I notice our Pollard building, no offense to Dan, Dan is my friend, James is my friend, you know, the security guy. So what I wanted to see this morning also, because if one person take care of 2 buildings is impossible. It's impossible for that person to manage both buildings at the same time. So we will have no one at Pollard building or bookstore. So kind of I felt, I'm not complaining, but like what I did, I just try to protect myself. So I'm going to come late. I will stay half an hour in the car, and then I will come as soon as the classes start. So, and again, as a cybersecurity professor, I would request to, I'm just putting out my proposal to Joe Potato that what you're doing is really great cybersecurity way, but also we need to look into our swipe card, like who is coming into the building, is that person authorized to come into the building? We need to ask ourselves. So probably swipe card is going to be another way of protecting, like feel safe. Nothing is 100% safe, but we might be able to feel safe a little bit.
Yeah, Saida, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your real talk, because so much of what I have been saying, you just said, and you said it far more eloquently. We are in a city and we understand that. And I think what I really appreciate is your own reflection around personal safety and what you're doing to take care of yourself, which is really important, especially after there have been incidences on Middle Street. So first, let me say thank you for that. Secondly, every single faculty member or staff member that's on this line right now feels the same way that you do around trying to give their best to students at a time when they don't want to be overly concerned around safety and security, and the college has to take some additional steps to deal with that. And we've had lots of conversations. In fact, we've had some conversations with groups of faculty. We will have conversations we need with students as well. We have had a conversation with the city manager and the Lowell Police Department about this particular issue. And in fact, used a lot of some of the language that you used about the fact that our faculty need to come in. They are focused on our students. They're focusing on teaching and learning. Their focus does not need to be on safety and security. And so the city of Lowell is very proud of having Middlesex Community College in it. So it's time for the city of Lowell to assist and step up. And they've done exactly that with recent sort of additional drive-bys, identifying faculty, police officers to be able to do that. We've had a conversation about our campus resource officer with the city manager. We've had some conversations recently about the police academy, all in the last week, because we need to push back on the city about what they can do for us. So externally, we're having lots of conversations about what the Lowell Police and what the city can do to make all of our students and all of our faculty feel safe. They have an obligation to us. The second piece that I'll mention to you is the fact that internally, we work with Allied Security. We have a security staff that Dan has articulated about those folks, the training they have when they come in. But at the same time, we understand that we made a shift in a security company, and that every time we run into incidences, we have to really assess whether or not that is the right company for us and whether or not they can deliver the level of security that we are looking for. So we are also in the process of having conversations about an evaluation and assessment of security that we currently have. We have added additional allied officers to that street after these conversations that we've had, both with faculty and staff. And we've also been really clear and sent a schedule to the Lowell Police Department and the city manager about when our classes begin, when our faculty tend to leave, when the Lowell High School faculty and Lowell High School students tend to leave. So they have a schedule of what our classes look like to be able to respond to that as well. The last item that you mentioned, Saida, is a really important one, because I think it's one that the institution has examined multiple times about swipe cards, safety and security systems, et cetera. And in each and every conversation that we have with the Department of Capital Asset Management and a lot of the projects that we've put forward in the future about what support we get from the state, is the fact that exactly that issue about how do we increase safety and security in all of our buildings. And that's a more serious conversation for us to have about ID cards, access, creating systems, and actually looking at the expense for some of these security systems to see what we can do. The last thing that you said is the most important thing that you've said in my mind, is that we can go through all of those exercises, and we will go through all of those exercises to do what we can as an institution. We will never be able to make anyone 100% safe. I appreciate you saying that, because it is a fact, it is a reality. You look at some of the incidences across the country, we know that. We've learned a great deal. Rebecca talked about that. But we want to assure you that we're here to have conversations today about these kinds of suggestions and steps that the college can do to make you feel more safe and more secure. The last thing is, I'd remind people that you are all employees of the college. Human Resources Department is here for you. No matter what level of issue that may have occurred, people go through different sort of reactions to those incidences in terms of their own anxiety and their own response. So please do not hesitate to reach out to Human Resources to get the kind of support that you may need around some of those issues. And again, part of today's conversation is, how do we work together to identify not only your personal responsibility, which Saida, you did a beautiful job of describing, but what does the institution have to do to make you more safe? And I think that I can't tell you that we have had more and more exhaustive conversations with my staff and the leaders at the campus about those very issues in the last 2 weeks than probably we've had here in decades. So we appreciate your comments and the work that you're doing with students. Thank you.
Thank you for feedback.
Sally.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for this presentation. It was useful, informative, and I appreciate that. As a community and a college, we're looking forward in terms of our security. I have two questions, and I'm on Middle Street, and I probably have a lot of the same feelings that Saida has, but I won't say them as well as she does. And my two questions, one is regarding the security personnel. What is the college's expectation of those personnel? Like, what do you expect of those personnel when they're on, like, let's say on Middle Street? What is your expectation? And then the third is, how many persons, like during the daytime, how many security officers are on that street? And I know they're out in the street sometimes, but where are they assigned to a particular building, or just specifically what's their responsibility on Middle Street?
Yeah, great question, Sally. And I'll let Patrick and Dan talk a little bit about this, because I know there's been a lot of questions about this lately, because we have increased presence at the entranceway to our buildings recently, but oftentimes those people are also roaming through the buildings, doing their regular checks, unlocking doors, locking doors, those kinds of things. So I'll let the people who know more about that schedule and the number of folks that we have on that street talk in more detail about that.
Dan, I'm going to toss it to you in a second. Sally, just to answer a couple of the questions on your from your direction. And anybody that's heard that I've met with over on Middle Street has heard me articulate these. I have a high level of expectation for those officers, and so does Dan. And I can tell you that when they're not met, we act pretty swiftly. And, anecdotally, there was at some point over the course of time, there was an officer who somebody had reported had fallen asleep at the post. That officer was removed from our contract that day. And was not allowed to return. So we do act very swiftly on it. There are 3 officers that are assigned over there. Phil last Wednesday met with the folks, actually you were there too, from the nursing department and the faculty over there. And as a result of the request from folks there, gave us the green light to hire an additional officer to assist over at the Derby building. But there's one thing I want to point out on that, because Dan has been getting these 6:15 a.m. Phone calls on this, things that people, said they come into a building and didn't see somebody in their location. But what happened was every single one of those has been investigated. If the person wasn't sitting at that post, we found out they were upstairs unlocking a classroom door for somebody, or they had gone to let somebody into a conference room. We don't want them to just stay at a fixed location. We want them to be mobile. We want them to be walking through your areas, and we are demanding that when they walk through their areas, they're saying hello or interacting with folks so that they're passing through. And it's funny, but I understand why it happens. But when we had some, our sworn police officers that were going through the area, even though they were just doing what we had asked them to do for pass-throughs, people got concerned because they saw, why was a low police officer on this floor? Is something wrong? No, it's because we asked them to do these walkthroughs, and they were literally just doing these check-ins. So we are, we've heard everything that everybody's been sharing with their concerns. We share those same concerns that we have in terms of what those individuals are presenting, because they are for our 24/7 building and asset protection, but they're also some of the first people that folks see when they come on campus. So we want you to continue reporting if there's any issues. I can promise you Dan acts pretty swiftly on these things. I challenge anybody to say he's not lifetime on texting. He's very responsive to when he gets these things, and he does move quickly to them, but he is working to accommodate, to make sure that they're a third party preventer, that they're meeting our standards, but also just to put things in perspective about how much some of these folks care for you. I know some of you are aware of this, but we have seasoned officers that have been, working their whole careers at this. And we have some of them that are straight out of Middlesex that are our students that are stepping into these roles to assist. So there is a learning curve there with them. But one of our seasoned officers last week, during the throes of what we're dealing with this external event that happened on campus, lost his mother. She passed away, and that security officer continued to come into campus every day, even though we asked him not to stay home and take care of what he needed to on the home front. And he said that he felt like he couldn't because it was an important time for us and the people needed to see him on campus. We saw him yesterday at the wake and thanked him for his service and reminded him that he needs to take care of family first. But his answer was that Middlesex is also part of his family. So even though he wasn't in for maybe an 8-hour shift, he was still doing the pass-throughs to be there. So that you folks could see that he wasn't ignoring what we were contending with from the incidents last week. So I just want to make sure that those kind of acts of kindness and the conscientious behavior aren't missed.
Okay. And that's, I know who you're speaking about, and and they're really great. My other question is, what is the policy about using this security personnel being on their cell phone, the texting while they're on duty? Are they told that they? So is there a policy about that?
Yeah, so they're not supposed to be on their phone unless obviously they're receiving an emergency from their home or whatever. So, I did receive some feedback on that and we addressed it. Just so that everyone knows, I hold a weekly staff meeting with the district manager of Allied, and we keep a very good security action plan. Abby updates this as we go, and we highlight these type of incidents so that when new officers come on, we don't run into the same problem. So we try to address these immediately. And is it going to happen? It's going to happen. And when it does happen, I need to know about it so that we can address it right there at the time.
So now we can expect 3 officers on Middle Street. Is that correct? Is that begun already, or
that's already been
okay.
going on?
Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right, good. Thank you very much. This was very helpful. Thank you.
Nope, Dan's frozen.
Dan froze. Sally, one of the other things that happened from last week's meeting is that the nursing faculty had asked for the building to be locked up at 6 p.m. so that because any classes that started at night were already underway by that point. So there has been some signage put up and the doors are being locked at 6. And if somebody needs access to the building after those classes have commenced, they can call the security number on the door and they'll get access to the building, but the buildings aren't open for won't be open for coming and going at that time.
That's great. That's great. And the other thing, Patrick, I'd like you to tell all of us about what you told me about 911. I think that was that was a revelation for me, and I think it's very important for everyone to hear that.
Yeah, well, we try to reiterate this as much as possible. We do it in the training classes as well. But one thing that we want everybody to remember, and I say it's got nothing to do with Middlesex, it's just got everything to do with your situational awareness in life, period, is that you should be dialing 911, period, regardless of who you've got coming from, from a sworn officer on campus or from the Allied Security or from Dan or I. You dial 911, that's going to leave our building instantly, and it goes directly in the city of Lowell. It goes to the Lowell Police Department, which is the public safety answering point for this community, and in Bedford, it goes directly to the Bedford Police Department. And the reason I say that is because when it lands at their terminals, it'll show where that call is originating from. So it pops right up on their monitor on where the call is generated from. But at the same time, it locks down a series of phones here at the college with an audible alarm that we can't use these phones until we clear that call and make sure somebody's been sent to that location. But the most important part of what Sally is referencing is that as soon as you dial 911 and you're talking to a dispatcher on those phones. I've said this in every one of the trainings we do because I used to oversee that function up at the Lowell Police Department. The dispatcher is getting calls at the same time on their business line and on their emergency line. It's the same person who's going to answer each call. The difference is they're going to answer the 911 call first because they believe it to be an emergency. So it could be a medical emergency in progress, a fire in progress, or reporting a crime in progress. But you doing that is going to start them automatically even as our officers are on the way. So you're going to have a dual response to that, but primarily from the external support from the EMS providers. They're going to be on their way because you've dialed that call. And as you've heard, as many of you have seen from a very highly publicized case over the past few days, that even a 911 call that's made where you keep the line open and don't speak on it provides A, some background noise about what could be occurring at that location, but B, even if you're not talking to them, they've got the information up on their screen about where the calls originate from, and they're on their way. So one of the worst calls that we had to deal with was called the 911 hang-up, when you don't know what was on the other end of it. It could have been an accidental dial, which people do here, dialing 9 twice to get out on an outside line. But the fact that the call was made, they still have to reestablish contact. So any 911 calls are logged outside the building and are going to get us a response from our partners. So don't hesitate to call for a medical emergency, a fire, or to report a crime in progress.
Now, if we use our cell phones, will they be able to get the location from our cell phones?
Same thing. That's technology has been significantly upgraded in the last 5+ years, where the cell phones used to go to the State Police Barracks in Framingham. Now they're directed straight to the local PSAP. So yeah, use your cell phone as well. They'll keep the line open until they've got somebody arrived on scene, or they can reestablish contact with the caller.
Yeah. Okay. Someone had in the chat, if we're using a school phone, do we still have to dial 9 out, or can we dial direct?
Dial direct.
Okay,
You can do either or, Sally. You can do 911 or just 911. We set it up that way so that you can do both, and it's actually now a law. So,
great. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Evelyn.
Thank you. Evelyn, work in the registrar's office, and also just want to say thank you, Saida, for speaking. I feel the same way in regards to being in Pollard. My question is, who decides whether the school goes on lockdown or buildings or is evacuated? We noticed that in Pollard last week, there was a bomb squad right after the incident with the robbery in Derby. And I was just wondering why we weren't on lockdown. After the shooting a few weeks ago, we were locked down, we weren't evacuated, but I was just wondering who makes the determination.
Excellent question, Evelyn. Excellent question, because it yields into exactly what happens with our conversations with the local law enforcement, which in both of those cases was the Lowell Police Department. So I'll start with the chronologically. I'll go back towards the incident that happened with the high school students on Palmer Street that went into the alley behind Pollard. So at that point, we had information that shots had been fired up towards the end behind Enterprise Bank, up at the coffee mill. And I was on the phone with Lowell Police Department, and Dan, as part of what Dan does, he oversees also our surveillance system, which has 280 cameras on both of our campuses. I was able to call up that system live time during the incident and see we have a camera in the back alley behind Pollard. So we saw that the suspects had fled down towards the other end, down towards Central Street and the Old Court. The difference there was, A, we knew there was a firearm involved because shots had been fired, but B, we also knew they had fled the area heading towards the opposite. So depending on where you're sitting, towards your left, down towards Central Street. They were able to use our video to detain the suspects down at the intersection of Central and Middle. But the reason, like, for example, that went into lockdown is because we absolutely knew there was a firearm involved, and there were shots that had been fired. So we put the information out on the texting system to remind folks just to stay in lockdown until further information can be provided, which we get from the police department live time. And this is actually a good time right now, Abby, if you can throw it in the chat over on the right, to put the link in there to remind folks how they sign up for those text messages, because that's one of the first, the primary tools we're going to use to communicate with you during this. I will tell you this, I don't know if it's a good sign, a bad sign, or take it as you will, but we have the largest number of folks enrolled in that system in the history of us having this, which is now 13 years. We have 12,000 people to get a text message within less than 7 seconds. So what happened then on the incident involving the unarmed robbery was that I was on the phone here with the Lowell Police Department, and Dan, who's actually in Bedford, was able to call up the remote camera surveillance system and saw that when the suspect had fled that area, A, first of all, there was no weapon shown. B, there was no weapon threatened, which is what would have caused us to go into a lockdown if there was anything that had been intimated for a weapon of violence. But Dan had the individual on camera fleeing the scene up Middle Street towards the coffee mill, up towards Rogers Toy, and away from our properties. If we had information that the suspect had gone, for example, across the street towards Pollard or down to the right towards Talbot, we would have updated that information and potentially gone into a lockdown and communication to share with folks about the suspect potentially being, approaching one of our other properties. But we had a clear video surveillance literally in at live time that the individual had fled the area. So we were on the phone with Lowell Police, and then I went over to the bookstore to meet with the folks involved there and glean the information from the detectives on scene that he was out of the area and there was no threat that was imminent for anybody on our properties. So I know it's a long-winded answer, Evelyn, but the answer is we get what we have for information from our external partners and share that live time as best we can. Subsequently, when other information was found on the whiteboards upstairs, that's when they called in the other units to come in and take a look at the building and make sure there was no other threats or dangers. And so, as folks know, because they've heard about this since 2009, but we've got people that are part of there's a regional police law enforcement agency called Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, NEMLEC, and it's 65 cities and towns, of which there's 2,500 law enforcement officers a part of. I serve on the foundation of that, and Dan is a member of one of their specialty teams, which was created in April of 1999 after Columbine. It's called STARS, School Threat Assessment and Response System, so that he gets call outs for any of the school systems in our area if there's a threat or a sudden or a natural death. But the great thing is it also gives us access to all of those resources. So in the case of last Tuesday, we were able to get 2 state police bomb squads and a Methuen dog to come and search the building and make sure our facility was secure and that there was no danger to anybody in our properties. So that's why they did the sweep through later in the day. There was no information that it was over in Pollard. So it was actually, to be honest, the individual, I don't think he knew where he was because the threat was actually against UMass Lowell, not MCC properties.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Pat. I have a multi-part question from Susan Hutchinson for Dan and Pat. Is the safety protocol information / signage being posted within the college addressing protocols for toxic gaseous breaches?
I don't know. I guess I'll be careful when I say about what the toxic gaseous breach. But I will say that in the same way that I would just address Sally's question. If we have anything regarding a potential chemical exposure, which I believe was the case that was used recently, somebody had asked us to contact 911, which did happen. And as a result, the outside entities came to assess the situation on scene. The fire department and EMS came to evaluate, just as they would if it was a medical emergency of an injury. But that's the same type of it falls under the umbrella of a police response, a medical response, or a fire department response. In that case, it would be the fire department, whose firefighters have been training in this for decades, to come in and assess the situation and evaluate if there was any danger to anybody else on campus. So please, don't hesitate if you think that there's been an exposure, for that to still follow the instructions that are at the bottom of that sheet that Dana referenced, which also has been put out on Newscaster and is also available on our website. And if Abby could tap up that the link to that over in the chat as well, people can see that. There's no reason not to share this, for faculty to share it with all your students, and for everybody even to include it, whether you put it in your syllabus or what. That information should be known by all to protect themselves.
And the more information that we have on an incident like this, when we relay that to the fire department, the better equipped they are when they're responding. They're going to respond and investigate and bring in, the stuff they need. But if we have information, then they'll bring it with them right then.
Thanks, Pat and Dan. The next part of this question is actually for Joe. How much presence does the college have in the cloud, and what degree of additional cyber attack / infiltration vulnerability do we open ourselves up to as a result of this cloud presence?
So we have a few systems in the cloud, but we will put more systems in the cloud. And the truth is, they're actually safer in the cloud.
Thank you, Joe. Is there anyone else with a question?
Can I make a comment? I'm really glad I had the opportunity to join in today. It's very worthwhile, learned a lot, and I appreciate Daria, our wonderful student trustee, bringing it to our attention. She does a great job and made us aware of all of this. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Annie.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand or you can put it in chat. Our panel of experts are ready and waiting.
Well, first, I just want to, while people are thinking of any last questions, I want to thank the presenters today. I asked all of those presenters to really be very forward thinking in what they are doing to make some corrections, some of those pivotal. Certainly in the area of cybersecurity, you've heard what we're doing and some of the efforts that are being made there. I think in the environmental health and safety, and actually I would refer to that card, Dan, that card talks about spills and chemical and toxic exposures on that card as well. So that card was designed as a full service card with all that information available. And it's good to get that card out to everybody so they can see it. I think we know we've got some follow up to get the threat assessment piece out from the BIDA and some others to get out to everyone as well. We want to send that out. I think people have asked a lot of really pertinent and important questions about a number of areas of safety and security, both personal and also in the issues of student reentry and student code of conduct. I want to thank the working group again. And in fact, on Thursday, part of the discussion period we've agreed to at FSA will be really focused on that. The working group has done tremendous work to revisit some policies, procedures, and practices that we can bring up to speed. So I want to thank the working group for that, and Rebecca and Arlene, who will be leading that conversation on Thursday at FSA as part of a follow-up that you may have some more questions about specifics about where the work is that the working group is making specific changes. And I think they'll be happy to talk about some of the progress in that work. So I'm sorry, Carolyn has a question or a comment.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Thank you for this. And I wanted to say thank you for the increased security on Middle Street and in Derby and in locking the doors, because that really has made a huge impact in all of us feeling a little bit more secure, both on the faculty and the students and staff side. One quick question I did want to follow up to from our meeting last week, as an aside, I walked into the building yesterday, and I think I'm just on high alert. So security was outside. And as I came through the door, I was going into the elevator, a student came, which I thought was a student, I believe was a student, came hustling, bustling behind me, very disheveled. Backpack was kind of like dragging, went running up the stairs. And I kind of did this, kind of looked and thought, I wonder really if this is a student or what's going on, just because I think my alarms are up and I'm a little bit nervous. And it's really hard to tell who's a student and who's not a student. And so I know we talked about having all students, maybe faculty, staff, everyone just wear ID badges around their necks to identify who should be in the building or who shouldn't be in the building. Is this something that we can ask everyone to do? Because I feel like had I saw an ID badge, I wouldn't have worried, but I did go up to my office and think, I wonder where that student was going. What floor did they get off on? Were they in classes? Do I alert someone? No, now you're just being nervous. And so I don't want to start, having to analyze whether or not people should be in the building or shouldn't be in the building. I feel like we should have a way without the badge access, because, that is a lot of money, like you said, just to be able to quickly identify that somebody should be where they're supposed to be or is part of the MCC system, whether it be staff, faculty, security, or students.
Yeah, Carolyn, I think in our conversation the other day, we talked about piloting something specific because in your particular building, we can identify which students go in and out based on the schedule, based on the very unique nature of the building and the labs that are in there. So I think that is still a distinct possibility. In fact, I know that we've had conversations and Joe has had some conversations. We've talked with some vendors about those kinds of badges, QR codes, the ability to track some of that. So some of that technology is out there. I think before we jump to the conclusion that we will be able to do that everywhere tomorrow, we've talked, as I understand it in our conversation last week, about a pilot for your specific building. So I would encourage us to do a follow-up conversation about that effort to see how effective it is. I think it will raise a number of complications in other buildings. It's certainly going to raise a complication in the Pollard building when there's also a charter school and a number of other renters that are actually in that building as well. So we really talked specifically about how we might be able to pilot something that in a very sort of significant and refined use area like the building that you're in. And I think we can continue to pursue that to see what value there is in it. And certainly part of the conversation about that is as we've talked before, in a program that actually selects students, then you can require them to wear any badge you want to, because that's how they're going to be in the program. So it does get a little more complicated as we move out into other areas and more general classrooms, but certainly something to consider. We have had a wish list in terms of getting more effective student ID cards here for a while, and it's time for us to invest in doing that, and also to invest in some faculty and staff. And you'll notice that in the student affairs area, they have started to wear badges like with sort of a cord around their necks for identification. And I think that there's some good examples that are already being used on campus on how to do this. And we're exploring that technology, its cost, and then the implementation locally in that pilot, and then what it would look like across the campus. And it's a great point that you brought it up. And I think we will continue to explore that in terms of its immediacy, but we would need your support and the support of your department and that building for that pilot to be effective initially.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe, we have a mobile app question in the chat. The mobile app says that the settings are set up for notifications. Do these notifications include emergency alerts? And if so, are test notifications put out so we can be sure it is working correctly on our devices?
So yes, the answer is yes, we can send emergency notifications. However, we're going to compete with our emergency notification text system. So I think it's a larger discussion about what is the preferred method to notify faculty, staff, and students of emergencies. And I think that's the RAVE text alert system. I defer to Pat. I don't know that we want two notification systems.
So Joe, I can only speak to what we've done historically. I know you and I were the first goons who had to go down and beta test this thing 13 years ago to get our mass notification system online. And at the time, we were the first in the state to do it. Now everybody has implemented different versions of it. I can only speak to the fact that what we encourage everybody to use is to go through that link that was posted on the right there to get into our mass notification system. And I say that because I can do it right here off of my phone, which I did while standing in the bookstore last week. I was also able to call down to Bedford to Abby and Dan, who were in Bedford doing the camera review, so they could send updates. I can do it from the iPad. I can do it it's a web-based application, so I can do it essentially from anyway. I say me, but there's others that have access to that system. And we've timed it, and I'm telling you, if I say 7 seconds, that might even be an exaggeration. That's how long it took for 12,000 people to get the notifications as this thing's happening. So we're going to use that for the rapidity of more messages getting out in a short period of time, which we did last week to also update folks in terms of the status with the suspect. But what I would say about the app is that I will never argue against redundancies. So it's the same thing that we talk about when people want to know if we have snow cancellation, that yes, you're going to get the text message before you get out of bed, but you can also, if you want, get up and watch it on any one of the TV stations. You can go to our website. You can get a variety of different ways to get your information. But in terms of the prompt, proven way that we know this works, I'm still urging people to use the mass notification system. In the app, which I will credit Ellen Ricka for being really on top of, is that virtually, I can't say 100% of the time, but I can say pretty darn close to every single text message that goes out to 12,000 individuals, Ellen then posts to the chat room or whatever you call it, the forums on the app itself so that the information is getting shared there as well. And I've seen some good interactivity with that when she's done that. So it's a help to have that, also as a backup in place. But I'm going to always default to what I know is a proven method for getting a word out to 12,000 people all at once, including, as we found out from last week, folks who've retired and still have their number in the system and apparently want to still know what's going on at Middlesex and then weigh in with a text back to us. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and in both of those cases, neither of those systems are perfect. And in fact, we'd have to retrain people to pay attention to their notifications on the app, because you literally have to open your app to really deal with your notifications, whereas the cell phone piece is a little more immediate and has been very successful in alerting people. So I think the idea of redundancy is something worth exploring. I think we'd have to identify exactly how many people are actually using the app. I think our students use the app a lot more than a lot of our staff do, but I've encouraged the staff that a lot of really good information is there available on that app. And so I think we can explore whether or not that is possible. And I think we'd have to figure out a sort of training procedure so that people know how to sort of react to those notifications that come off the app versus the cell phone and the text.
Any other questions?
So with that, I want to thank Beth for her facilitation. I want to thank the presenters. I mostly want to thank the community. We have bravely talked about a lot of things in these critical conversations that are going to be important to the institution going forward. I do and am very aware of the world that we currently live in and sort of the nature of what's going on in the political climate, what's happening and the changes that are happening in the downtown of Lowell. We need to be very vigilant about what we can do. I really appreciate the comments that were made about people's personal responsibility and the institution's responsibility. And I think that your comments and your suggestions today will help us as we work through a lot of these suggestions in terms of piloting some areas that we can do to make sort of the safest environment that we possibly can, with a complete understanding that there is no 100% perfectly safe environment. And I appreciated those comments as well. But I do want you to know that part of these conversations is about hearing your concerns and acting on your concerns. And I appreciate your really constructive and informative questions today about what you're thinking, what's in the back of your mind, and how we can better respond. And as we continue to upgrade some of these issues and respond to some of the questions, we'll use a future critical conversation to circle back with you to inform you about the progress that we've made. We will continue to have conversations with the Board of Trustees and with my leadership team about safety and security on campus on all levels. I want to thank the presenters today, and I want to thank all of you for your time, as always, sir, committing to the community in the way that you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Have a great day,
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.